exceptional.
Will the Cincinnati Reds make a trade this trade deadline season? And by trade, we mean be buyers. We are going to tell you why we think that could happen on today's Locked On Reds Live Edition.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds, and we are live. Welcome into a live YouTube edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Reds your 1, 2, 3, third listen, fourth listen. We're blowing up the feeds today. Love talking baseball with you guys. I'm Steve Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr, and we are diehard baseball fans. We have a passion for the Cincinnati Reds. We have taken our love of the game, our passion for baseball, and we have turned that passion into information for you. We want to thank all of you that have listened to all the episodes today and that are here every time we go live. We love talking baseball with you. If you're an everydayer, let us know. Get in these comment sections today. We're going to be taking your questions and comments here in a little bit, and we love talking baseball with you on Twitter as well in between episodes. On today's podcast, we are going to get into whether or not the Reds should be a buyer in the trade market. We're also going to be talking about who could be the next impact rookie for the Reds. CES, I'm looking at you. And we're also going to be taking your questions and comments, as I said. Also, quick shout out to the Locked On Bengals guys who are in the chat right now. What's up? I don't know if that's James or Jake, but what's happening, guys? We appreciate the support. Appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. All right, Jeff, let's dive into this because we've been talking about it. The Reds pitching staff in general, both the starters and the bullpen, is going to need some work. The starting rotation, much more so than the bullpen, but because of the starting rotation, this bullpen is eventually going to run out of gas. You just did a crossover with our buddies over at Locked On Orioles, where the comparison between the Reds bullpen now and the Orioles bullpen of last year was made. And it's a scary comparison, but probably an accurate comparison in that when this bullpen right now in 2023 reaches the month of August, reaches the month of September, there might not be a whole lot left in the tank. So the obvious answer is for the Reds to go out and buy themselves a relief pitcher arm like a Aroldis Chapman to fill the void a little bit. And they need to go out and maybe buy themselves a starting pitcher arm, say a Michael Lorenzen or a Bieber or a Lance Lynn, any of those guys we've been talking about. But here's the thing, Jeff, to do that, it's going to cost. You have to spend to get pitching in this league at a deadline deal. So where do we go from here?
So I think we got to kind of lay out who's available or who we think might be out there on the market. I think you can pretty much chalk up the White Sox as a team that is looking to sell. They're a team that really needs to rebuild their farm system, really needs to kind of reset everything because everything that they did 3 years ago has turned into absolutely nothing. So they've kind of got to start over. Then you also look at the Royals. I think there's a couple of guys that you could probably get from the Royals right now, being it Chapman, maybe Zack Greinke, maybe Scott Barlow from their bullpen as well. And then Shane Bieber's not a guy that the Guardians are going to re-sign. And as much as the Guardians are in contention right now, there's an argument to be made that Shane Bieber's still going to be available regardless of how that plays out because there's an extra year of control. Now, he far and away is going to be the prize of the trade deadline, which means not only will he be expensive, but there's going to be a bidding war as well. So if you look at different guys like that and you kind of think of some of the names, some of the players that the Reds could go for, I think there's a sweet spot when it comes to how the Reds can add. And it's about those guys who have expiring contracts this year who maybe aren't performing as well as their career states, or they're at the latter part of their career. And that's probably where we start to look at guys like Lance Lynn and Zack Greinke as players that the Reds could potentially offer up maybe a mid-level prospect for.
And that's the key. Offer up a mid-level prospect for it. I think to frame the rest of this conversation, Jeff, you know, we're talking about the type of players they should go get. The veteran that's, you know, near the end, maybe the mid-level type starter that a team won't try and get CES for. But we need to decide, and we being not me and you, the Reds need to decide. And we need to decide what we're comfortable with. Where's the cutoff line as far as prospect capital and who you're willing to trade? Now, I'm not willing to talk about CES at all, period. End of discussion. He should not be included in any trade talks at all. Neither should Connor Phillips or Chase Petty. I don't think you trade that young pitching to get a rental on a older pitcher for a season or two. I think Connor Phillips is in this Reds rotation sooner than later, maybe even before the All-Star break. Chase Petty, not as close, but could really vie for a spot as early as next season. So I don't trade either one of those guys. So we know it's going to take somebody with a name, somebody that's ranked in order to get a pitcher. It's just the nature of the beast. So for me, I think the most I'm willing to pay is Edwin Arroyo as a trade piece, but that's going to have to bring back more than you're going to have to get more than a 1 season rental if you're willing to trade Edwin Arroyo to bring in that arm. And I don't know that the trade market for a pitcher is in such a place that you can do a 1-for-1 using Edwin Arroyo and get a pitcher back for the starting rotation that's going to make a meaningful difference. That's going to be worth trading away the prospect capital.
It's funny you mentioned that because Lucas is in the comments and he says, I'm fine with trading Edwin Arroyo and Rhys Hines for a pitcher.
Oh yeah. I would do that.
Yeah, I mean, that package would get it done for somebody. I don't know about Shane Bieber. I think Shane Bieber's going to take like a Luis Castillo type trade package. And if I'm doing that, there needs to be another qualifier with that, and that Shane Bieber should sign for at least 1 more year. Because so here's the thing, he's contract is through this season and through next season. So then if the Reds were to go out and get him and give up what is necessary to get him, I would need some assurances that he's going to be here in 2025, or at least have a contract through 2025 that you can then trade yourself and bring back something as well. This is an interesting thought for me because I think that the Reds can get a guy that is above the level of just get me from A to B, he's a body, but they don't necessarily need to go for an ace. I've been saying for a while they need to look at Lance Lynn. Now, I think that there are other teams that are doing this. Lance Lynn's contract is up at the end of the season. Lance Lynn has not had the best of seasons, but his last 4 starts have been pretty solid. I know he had the 16 strikeout start in there a couple of starts ago, but he's given up 3 runs, 4 runs, 3 runs in the last couple of starts, and he's pitching, 5 2/3, 6 innings. That's really what we need. We need a dude that can go out there every 5th day and throw 6 innings. I think Lance Lynn could do that. I think Zack Greinke could do that as well, but where they're at in their careers, where their contracts are at, and how they're performing so far this season does not lend them to require an Edwin Arroyo in the deal. I think you could possibly get Lance Lynn or Zack Greinke for, maybe 2 mid-levels or a mid-level in a flyer or, something like that. Maybe even throw in like Nick Senzel, who, yes, he's having a pretty solid season.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, you're basically what you're saying is a mid-level guy. Like we could say Rhys Hines. We can use Rhys Hines as that placeholder name, a guy that has tremendous upside but hasn't really panned out. And then a change of scenery deal for a guy like a Nick Senzel that you're talking about, who has shown flashes, has shown that he has an ability to play at the big league level, but just hasn't consistently put it together. I think you're right. That's a good package that you could send out and get a guy like a Lance Lynn in return.
Yeah. And this is the other thing too. And I shout out to the Quirky Picker Chad. He makes a good point. You're assuming all three of our big starters, Green, Lodolo, and Ashcraft, will be healthy in the postseason. Problem is we have to get to the postseason first. That is why I'm looking at something that needs to be done. I think, a week or so ago, whenever Hunter Green was not slated to be out for the next month, we were looking at this and we're saying, you know what, I think they can endure. I think they can work with this and largely stand pat, maybe make a move within the margins. Now, I do think they need to go get an arm or two. I think ideally you get a starter and a relief pitcher because kind of like you mentioned at the top of this segment here, our Locked On Orioles guy, Connor Newcomb, was on with me for a crossover here today. And he laid out what happened to the Orioles bullpen last season. It was twofold. They traded away Jorge Lopez to the Twins, and Felix Bautista really started to kind of degrade because it was his first real long season playing as the closer, pitching in high leverage situations. So he just got worn down really quickly. And there at the end of August, when he started to wear down, the rest of the bullpen did. Stop me if I'm wrong. Looks like here recently that Alexis Diaz is starting to slow down a little bit. And as much as I would hate to see that happen, because it's hard to have this 1 to 2 run lead in a game that you really want the Reds to win, but also say, no, we can't go to Alexis Diaz because we need to save him for what might be down the road. So there's that element of David Bell's managing that I can't fault him for using Alexis Diaz as much as he has. But as soon as he goes down and starts really losing a step or losing some miles per hour off his fastball or something, then we're going to see the entire bullpen take a big step back. And as much as we have shouted out the bullpen for as well as they played so far this season, if they take a step back, it's not going to look good.
All right, two things before we get out of this segment and move on, Jeff. And we'll get back to a lot of this in the questions and comments on the back half of the show. But two things. My hot take of the day is this. Alexis Diaz is going to be...
Diaz.
Yeah, wrong Diaz. Alexis Diaz is going to be an all-star. I really have no doubt in my mind that he's going to get selected for the all-star team. The Cincinnati Reds absolutely should not let him pitch in the all-star game. He should be shut down completely for the all-star break. He should not be allowed to touch a baseball. I know that's a bummer. You want a young guy like that to be able to enjoy and go to the all-star game and all those things. Let him go, but tell whoever is in charge of these things, Major League Baseball, that he cannot pitch under any circumstances. Greg Hughes was reading my mind because I was going to ask you about this, Jeff. I was going to talk about a Chapman-Greinke combination trade and what that would look like. That this does this feel like enough to package Edwin Arroyo and Rhys Hines for? I feel like we'd be overpaying just a smidge. Is there a third guy in Kansas City that we could ask for in a deal where we sent the other direction, Rhys Hines and Edwin Arroyo, and bring back Chapman and Greinke?
I've got a thought about that, and it comes from our brand new Locked On Royals host, Jack Johnson, who said this on his show the other day. I'm going to tell you what that thought is coming up here in just a minute. Before we get into that, though, got to tell you about our sponsors of FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 sports book for you to check out and the official sports book of Locked On. And brand new customers can get a no-sweat bet of up to $1,000 just for joining today. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. FanDuel's got a lot of interesting lines, and in fact, right now, I'm looking at this line that is the division odds. Currently, as sits on Thursday, June 29th, the Reds are second highest odds to win the NL Central. Currently sitting in first place now, Steve, but FanDuel is still buying the Milwaukee Brewers. FanDuel does not think that the Milwaukee Brewers are going to sell, or at least based on these odds. They have the Brewers at +110, and they have the Reds at +230. Right behind the Reds are the Cubs at +380. Then you jump down quite a bit at +850 are the St. Louis Cardinals. And you talk about not believing in anybody. That April is long gone for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are at +3,000. to win the NL Central.
Make sure you send that over to Ethan Smith at Locked On Pirates.
I think he'll probably get about the same time you get that Pirates shirt that he wants you to wear because of losing that opening day bet. But yeah, check it out today. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. They're an official sports betting sponsor of Major League Baseball. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day, your first, second, third listen on a busy day here today. Make sure that you stick with us through the weekend. Lots of stuff going on. Padres series, big time last home series before the All-Star break, and then we'll get you set for the road to the All-Star break coming up on Monday, because we are here with you every single day, because we are Locked On Reds every single day. And also, you can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast for your Cincinnati Reds on Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Okay, so you said another name, and this could be an interesting thing for me, because I was very intrigued to hear our Locked On Royals host Jack Johnson talk about this, but he mentioned that if you look at the Royals and you look at where they are in their rebuild, would you say that they're closer to the end of the tunnel, or they're just beginning?
Just beginning.
Because it looks like they're just beginning. So if you can get some heavy prospect capital for including Bobby Witt Jr. in a trade,
ooh,
would you go Bobby Witt, Aroldis Chapman, and Zack Greinke if it meant giving up Edwin Arroyo, let's say Chase Petty, and I don't know, like a lower level hitter? Yeah, Rhys Hines. And you probably would have to give one or two more prospects in that deal that might be a little bit lower, like a Leonardo Balcazar and maybe like a Hector Rodriguez or something. I know our friend Crazy is just absolutely losing his mind.
Losing his mind. Yeah. I would, you know what, Jeff, I would consider that deal. If they were willing to put Bobby Witt Jr. in a deal, I would consider trading Chase.
Look at the team speed.
I would consider trading Chase. That absolutely 100%. I don't know that at the end of the day I would pull the trigger on it, but this is not a hard no for me. I mean, if you had said CES, I'd have been like, no, full stop. I don't care. We're not trading him. But Chase Petty and Edwin Arroyo, I would consider that.
What it's about here, and you mentioned this, like trying to get a little bit more if you're going to give a little bit more. What it's about is twofold. Obviously, we want the Reds to continue to win. We want to bolster the rotation, bolster the bullpen, and make themselves good for now and for the future. But also, it's about taking away from the rest of the division. St. Louis is probably thinking, well, we might have a shot to come back here. Milwaukee could be waffling. I mean, we are the ones that are predicting their demise and their seller's mentality at the deadline. But I also think that there's something to that. But could the Brewers flip it if they make a trade for somebody? I think that it's a very interesting idea. The Reds need to look at this from two angles here. How can they get better without giving up too much? But also, how can they take away from their division rivals? Because right now, it feels like the Reds have the ability to make a couple of moves and put their foot on the throats of the rest of this division and really move forward to get that win.
Oh, Jeff, you blew up the comment section with this proposed trade. It's going absolutely crazy. I don't know if you saw those scrolling across the bottom of the screen while you were talking, but, questions range from where are you going to play Bobby Witt Jr. to are we going to create a new position between shortstop and third base?
Play six infielders,
There's a couple. Yeah. There are a couple hard no's to trading Edwin Arroyo in the chat. This is why I love these proposed chat. And I know this is not what this segment is supposed to be about. So guys, we're going to circle back to this in the next segment, but I do want to get to this next topic. And that is who the next impact rookie is going to be for the Reds, because it's a different answer than you might think. The easy answer is to just say Christian Encarnacion Strand. He's going to be the next impact guy. And that would be true if the Reds were actually treating him the way that he should be treated, because if they were, he would already be at the big league level, and we would have moved on from all the Elly De La Cruz conversation, I think, and start talking about CES a lot.
We'd combine
them. There'd be less Elly talk, more CES talk. That's what I'm saying. But the fact of the matter is, for whatever reason, whether it's Nick Krall's plan, whether it's simple roster math, they haven't done that. but the nature of the beast that is the starting rotation right now is going to necessitate another call-up. That call-up is going to be Connor Phillips. I think we will see Connor Phillips before we see CES, unless there's an injury. Like, there's some speculation out there on the interwebs today that Joey Votto's feeling a little bit of something in his shoulder, and that's why he hasn't been playing as much. We haven't seen any confirmation from the team or the beat writers about that yet, but let's just say there's another injury somewhere in there. Then you might get CES, because I don't know how much longer Nick Krall can keep him away. I imagine it won't be too much longer before CES is just standing outside Nick's office going, how about now? How about now? How about now? But
I'm ready.
but barring an injury, I think a pitcher is going to be the next impact rookie, and I think that's going to be Connor Phillips.
I did just see that Christian Roa also got promoted to AAA. Now, he's a guy that has really dealt with a lot of injury issues through his minor league career. Don't necessarily know if he's going to be called up before Connor Phillips would, but I agree with you. I think that there's two reasons for this. And yes, whenever Christian Encarnacion Strand gets that call, it's going to be electric. We're going to be talking about even more of this lineup. I really think that this lineup is just going to even get even better if that's possible. But the need of Connor Phillips and his talent combined with that, the fact that he has worked out the whole walks issue, hopefully, I think worked it out, in a consistent basis moving forward, is something that he can translate to the major league level. I understand we've seen different reporting. AA has a different type of baseball that they are using this year than it's different from the Major League Baseball, but I still think that limiting walks is something that can translate. So I think that he will be able to kind of make that adjustment much quicker. And if he does, then you are talking about 2, maybe even 3 studs if Graham Ashcraft really starts to make that turnaround here. And then the starting rotation conversation flips from how much of a liability is it to, yes, it's exactly what we need it to be. Because hear me out. We don't need Cy Young caliber pitchers 1 through 5 in this rotation. With the lineup that the Reds have, you just need a quality start. That's all you need. You don't need a 2.5 ERA or even a 3 ERA. A 4.5 ERA is going to do it. It's just we've been dealing with starts from Luke Weaver and starts from Brandon Williamson where he's blown up, and that's been the tough thing because you just kill the bullpen in those starts.
Yeah, and a decision is looming, Jeff. This is not, pure, us pie in the skying this thing. A decision is looming. The Reds shuffled the rotation. We talked about this, today at some point in time in one of the episodes that are in the feed. We talked about the fact that the Reds have shuffled the rotation a little bit for the Padres series, and that Andrew Abbott's pitching on Sunday on regular rest, utilizing the off day. So the Padres are catching the best part of a bad rotation. They get Graham Ashcraft, they get Brandon Williamson, and they get Andrew Abbott in this 3-game set. That kicks the can down the road just a little bit, but during that series with the Nationals, the Reds are going to need another starter. They're going to have to bring up somebody. Now, Charlie Goldsmith is reporting that under the normal roster rules, Levi Stout's not eligible to come back up because of the waiting period after being sent down, nor would when, I'm not sure where he stands on being cleared of
he was cut off the 40-man. Yeah.
He was cut off the 40-man, but nobody picked him up, right? He's back down to Louisville.
Yeah, he's back.
So he could, in theory, be re-added, I believe, but only if there's an injury. So I wonder if the Reds do the old
inflamed ERA.
Luke Weaver has a bruised ego and an inflamed ERA and is going to be on the injured list for a hot minute so that they can bring up one of Levi Stout or both again to piggyback them in a start versus the Nationals. That buys you a little bit more time, because then you've kind of limped your way to the All-Star break, right? You're limping your way there. It gives you a little bit of time to take a breath. I want Nick Krall to go maybe make a deal, but it's got to be the right deal. It can't be rushed, and it can't be a desperation buy for the Reds. That, we've seen how Nick Krall does as a seller. And, we've seen the get crawled hashtags and we've seen the praise for the returns he's gotten on the deals selling off parts. Well, that's going to be what he's trying to avoid now. We haven't seen him in buyer mode is what I'm saying. So I want him to slow his roll and make smart decisions. So if it means another Levi Stout piggyback, if they've got to find a way to shoehorn Luke Weaver onto the injured list, I'm good with that until we get to the All-Star break.
I kind of wonder about Levi Stout because I feel like he is a guy that you and I and a lot of folks have looked at and said, okay, maybe he's a future part of this rotation. But there was something that was said whenever the Reds made the deal and he was part of the trade coming back from the Mariners, that both of our Locked On Mariners guys said, yeah, he profiles more as a bullpen guy moving forward. I almost wonder, and maybe this is coupled with a move of either a small trade or a waiver wire claim. I just threw up the comment about Chris Flexen, and he's a guy that we talked about on yesterday's podcast of being a possible low-key add. Maybe Derek Johnson can fix him type pitcher. Maybe you slot him into the rotation, you bring up Levi Stout to kind of be the fireman for a Chris Flexen or a Brandon Williamson or something like that, where you can piggyback him off of this guy who starts, because they just haven't stretched out Levi Stout. And I don't know that calling him right back up at this moment is going to help him. Maybe we get 3 innings out of him. Maybe we get 4 innings out of him. But I think based on the way that they have managed him personally, I almost think they're telling us that Levi Stout is going to be a bullpen piece moving forward.
I really hope that's not true. I'm still holding out hope that he figures it out to be a piece of the rotation, to be a solid number 5 guy. I think that he could be a solid 4 or 5 pitcher in this rotation. I don't feel like we've really seen all that he has to offer. I don't think the Reds have given him an opportunity to show us and showcase what he can do. He gets called up for an emergency start. He gets called up fresh off the injured list when he hasn't been stretched back out yet. He's been put in situations that aren't optimal in showing what kind of a starting pitcher he can be. I would love to see him get a turn against the Nationals, a true legit start against the Nationals. No, is he stretched out? Will he be able to give you 6? No, I don't think so. But 4, maybe sneak into a 5th inning with solid, pitch control, low pitch counts. Yeah, I think he might be able to do that against the Nationals. So I would love to see it. But let's do this, Jeff. Let's hit this next break and let's just come back and keep attacking all of this comment section. They're flying by once again faster than I can read them at some point in time here. So let's get into all of those watching us lives, questions and comments, and we're going to get into them coming up right after this. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen. Jeff and I are so excited to be here on this live YouTube edition. This is going to drop into the audio feeds for tomorrow, actually. But we're going to be all over the place, keeping you covered for the Cincinnati Reds. Make sure you're following us between shows on Twitter. You can follow Jeff at Jeff Carr. That's Jeff with 3 Fs. You can follow me at S. Offenbaker. That's with 2 Fs. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. Also, don't forget, you can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just download the app and search the word Reds. All right, let's do this thing, Jeff, because the comment section is going off. There's a lot of smart takes going on, flying by over here, and I want to get to as much of them as possible. There's lots of great proposals in here. One of the things I want to address, there's tons of comments about this, and I'm not just going to go grab one at random, but the idea of trading or packaging or trading in separate deals Kevin Newman and Nick Senzel in order to bring something back. I don't know that either one of those guys individually bring you back enough. Maybe you can get a bullpen arm for one of those guys, particularly Kevin Newman. But one of the comments against that type of deal is that right now, both of those guys are valuable if they were used correctly. And we talked about how David Bell doesn't use them correctly always, but they're solid against left-handed pitching, and you need guys like that. So trading them away at the All-Star break, does that hurt the team more than it helps it in what you could get in return? Do we want to not trade away active roster people and disrupt the chemistry? We worried about this. We didn't worry about this. Some people worried about this. We worried about the disruption of the chemistry when Joey Votto came back. We worried about changing the ingredients to the stew, so to speak, at the big league level while they were playing so well. Do we worry about that in deadline deals, or do you think that the active roster guys accept that that's part of baseball, part of making the team better, and they press forward? Because it wouldn't be like trading Suarez and Winker before the season started. I don't think it would have that type of impact.
Right, and I think that is where you say Jonathan India should not be traded, because Jonathan India is part of the core of this locker room feeling. I think that trading Nick Senzel or trading Kevin Newman doesn't disrupt that at all. In fact, I think the guy that you would probably bring in is partially scouted for the way that he would fit in with this team. I also think that this team's chemistry is so strong based on guys like Matt McLain, based on guys like Elly De La Cruz, Will Benson, Jonathan India, all these different guys, Spencer Steer, make up a team chemistry core that is so strong that I don't think you upset it by bringing in different types of guys. Like, low key, and this is not a hot take that we could ever like quantify, but low key, I think you could add Tommy Pham back to this locker room, and I don't think that there's a problem with that because this locker room is so strong. So I'm not worried about the chemistry of this. I think everybody fits in so long as the team continues to perform well. And I think that there's another thought with this too that I want to get into about Newman and Senzel and the idea of trading them separately. I think you only trade one. I think if you trade Newman, you keep Senzel, or if you trade Senzel, you hang on to Newman for the rest of this season. The offseason, that's a topic we will talk about as whenever the offseason gets here. But for this trade deadline season, I think you trade one. Because, yes, they are both so strong against left-handed pitching, and you can slot them in where you need to, but also you don't need both of them. TJ Friedl, he can hit lefties. You don't have to take him out just because a left-handed pitcher comes into the game. I think Will Benson can do it. His minor league career shows his average and his on-base don't dip that much. His slugging does, but he still sees pitches well from left-handed pitching. So I think that there is not this just built-in weakness / left-handed bomb that there was in years past where you just put anybody who can throw a ball with their left hand on the mound and all of a sudden the Reds can't score.
How's this for a lineup? Friedl, McLain, Fraley, EDLC, Steer, Benson, India, Votto, Stevenson. It's a pretty darn good lineup. That's from our buddy Steve in the comment section. I like that one. Listen, so if we're only trading one of them, does it make sense to trade one over the other in this scenario, right? It probably you get a little bit of a better return, right? Also, just because of his former first-round pick status and all of the hype and flash that surrounds him. Yes.
Yeah, I think that Nick Senzel would be the more enviable of the two, and I think they're both under arbitration, but you would still have one more year of arbitration left with him. I think ultimately, though, there is something to be sold in the year that he is having. Now, he's not setting the world on fire, but according to Baseball Reference, he has more WAR this year than he's had in any other season that he's ever played. And that's including last year when he was largely healthy. So I really think that there could be a smidge of value. And when I say value, I'm talking about a middle relief guy. I'm not talking about a setup guy. I'm not talking about a closer. I'm talking about a fresh arm to come in and help in the middle relief here. But also, it's something that I think Nick Krall is considering right now, because Nick Senzel, while he provides you with some interesting at-bats against lefties and the crazy bunt that he put down against Felix Bautista last night, that it won't be soon until I forget that one. That was a fun moment in that game. But overall, I think Nick Krall has the ability to trade him, and I think he will.
So, Jeff, as for a bit of housekeeping as we're moving forward, do we want to do an audio wrap here for you? Will that help you, or should we continue on? All right. So, folks in the comment section watching live on YouTube, stay here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to do a quick audio wrap just to help with the post-production, and then we're going to get right back into this. All right, Jeff, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Before we get out of here, don't forget that you can catch every pitch of the Reds hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just download that SXM app and search the word Reds.
Yep. Thanks so much, everybody, for checking us out. Coming up on Monday, we will wrap up the Padres series. And if anyone survived the Taylor Swift concert on Friday, come join us on the Monday episode. But as for then, you can count on me and Steve to be Locked On Reds every single day.
All right, let's get right back into this. There's so much happening in the comment section. I can't keep up. What say you to this? Nick Senzel is completely unreliable at the plate, and it's not like he's a rookie. Just plain average and currently serving no real purpose.
Lefties. Like, he needs to be a hard and fast platoon guy. If there's a lefty on the mound, we'll play him. And if there's not, we won't play him. Like, he can't hit right-handers. It's period, plain and simple. I think he's hitting like $140 against him this year. And I don't think that is like a tiny sample size issue. I think that's been something his entire career that he's had. So, I think he's useful against left-handed pitching. I don't know that I trust him defensively. I'm with you. I don't trust him defensively in the corner outfields really that much. And I know he came into the game in right field last night, but yeah.
Let's move into another one. Josh checks in, says he's an everydayer. Thanks, Josh. We appreciate you. Says, where do you guys see Jake Fraley right now with the team? I love him to death, but Will Benson has pretty much forced his way into more playing time than Jake. I don't see that this way because I think that's a great corner outfield combination, especially against right-handed pitching. You start both of those guys. And then versus lefties, Jeff, I don't know if I'm quite ready to get in on the Will Benson should play every day hype train. I know he did well against left-handed pitcher the other night there in Baltimore. I think I'll need to see a little bit more, but of course, in order to see that, David Bell just has to do it. So I don't think that what you do with Will Benson necessarily impacts Jake Fraley. I think I'm about decided, though, that Jake Fraley shouldn't get a whole lot of playing time against left-handed pitching. I think he is really a platoon guy. I know he's had some limited success at times, but I think at the end of the day, Jake Fraley is a guy you want to just start against right-handed pitching.
No, I agree. I think that there's a nice lineup that you can build against right-handed pitching that includes both Fraley and Benson on the corners, Steer at first, and Joey DHing. So I think that it's an easy lineup move around there. Then against right-handed pitching, you can kind of mix that up. I've always been in the camp that has said I want to see Fraley play more against left-handed pitching so that we know, because I feel like his career exposure to lefties just isn't enough for me to know. But as long as the Reds continue to have guys who can mash against left-handed pitching, let's just make sure we put him in the situations that he is best suited for.
All right, I'm trying to find the next one that we're going to talk about. Sorry, Jeff, they're going by so fast I wasn't able to grab all of them. Oh, here it is. Mark Turner asks, what about using an opener for Luke Weaver? I keep hearing this. He asked if they should do this if they insist on keeping him on the roster. His biggest problem seems to be the first inning, and entering the game in the bottom of an order may help. Is that the problem, Jeff, in your mind? Or do you think that I don't know, maybe they shouldn't have him throw 30 extra pitches in the bullpen before he goes out there. Just ask him to throw 30 max effort pitches before you put him in the game. Because I don't know that it's a top of the order problem. Because 9 batters came and went in the first inning in his last start. So, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all did fairly well against him. So for me, I really think they should try him as just a straight reliever. I don't think he needs an opener. And when I say reliever, I mean a true reliever. You bring him in for an inning, 2 innings of work. You allow him to focus and use his 2 best pitches and pitch with maximum effort every time he's out there. I want to see what that pitcher looks like. I understand he's been bad. He wasn't great in Kansas City. He's been bad in the rotation here, but at some point in time, he was able to work his way through a minor league system and make it to the major leagues. There has to be some stuff there. Let's see if we can unlock it by putting him in the best position to be successful. And that would be, for me, in the bullpen, being able to pitch with maximum effort for a limited amount of time.
Yeah, I think that he is a guy that would benefit more from being a 5th, 6th, 7th inning type relief pitcher. I don't know that an opener helps him. He could be a guy that when it comes to his pitching, and it's so frustrating to watch his start yesterday, giving up 4 runs in the first inning and then retiring the next 10 batters. It was just like, seriously, what did it take you so long to do that for? This is kind of, to me, it's reminiscent of the argument that we had about Luis Castillo about, I think it was about 2-3 years ago. No, 2 years ago in 2021, whenever he was starting off really rough. Like, you remember the first month and a half, 2 months, he was getting shelled every first inning. Seemed like he'd go out there, give up 3, 4, 5 runs, and then the rest of his start, he wouldn't give up anything and he'd strike out a bunch of guys. But everybody's saying, we need to get an opener. I think there's something to some guys that just need to see a couple of outs before they really get going. You know, they always say that about quarterbacks in the NFL. You know, certain types of quarterbacks, you need to throw like a screen pass or a swing pass. You need to throw something short so that they see the ball go into the receiver's hands, and then the rest of the game they're going to be all right. Or like in golf, you know, sometimes you just need to see the ball go into the hole so that you know you can actually do that. When it comes to Luke Weaver and his pitching, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you get him to feel as though he just got his first out and he can really start rolling, but I feel like that's kind of how he pitches.
Let's go and have a little catcher conversation, because while my opinion hasn't changed on the 3 catcher situation, I'm just wondering about the best way to do it at this point. Mark McWhorter says it's time to move on and free up a catcher spot. Steve checks in and says, keep Maile and say goodbye to Casali. I don't know where you go with this catcher situation. Will they have the intestinal fortitude to cut Curt Casali?
I think that's the thing. Like, it just depends on who you want to keep. If you want to keep Maile, you have to cut Casali. And if you want to keep Casali, you probably could trade Luke Maile.
What do you make of this? John says, I think you could start Luke Maile every day and he would hit as well as 2023 Stevenson.
He has looked decent at times.
I think the thought there is, do they consider trading Tyler Stevenson? I say no to that. One, just because his value is as low as it's ever been right now. And B, I'm still not convinced he's not playing semi-injured or not at 100%. There's something wonky going on with Stevenson that we're going to find out about later and be like, that's what was going on.
And remember what we were saying about Jonathan India on today's episode, where we were just like, you know, he's seen these guys come up. He's seeing how good they're doing. Maybe he's pressing a little bit to make sure that he's still the dude when it comes to production-wise. I think the same could probably be said for Tyler Stevenson. There's like weird things out there because I just can't put my finger on why he has struggled so much. But he had a 2-hit night last night. He was doing pretty well at taking the ball the other way, hitting it into right field, and getting a nice single out of it. When he starts doing that on a consistent basis, then we'll know he's back. Because I don't think, and we got ahead of ourselves when we started thinking power and homers and things like that. Yeah, it's just, I think he is a solid hitter. He's like a Sean Casey type hitter. He's never going to wow you with the home run numbers, but the average and the RBIs and the on-base percentage is all going to be there.
I want to grab this real quick from Lucas. He says, send down Casali, bring up CES. CES would be ideal DH first base. Jeff and I talked about that maybe a week ago. The piece in there, though, Lucas, is you can't send down Casali. You have to cut it. They're going to have to just absolutely let him go. When I talked to John Sadak last week, he thought that the Reds would not cut Casali. If anything, maybe trade one of these catchers. I don't know how much trade value Casali has. Maybe there's a team out there that's desperate for a number 2 catcher that would give you, a low A flyer prospect type of guy for him. Luke Maile probably has a little bit more trade value right now than Curt Casali does, but I don't think I want to go that route. I think when the dust settles, I want the catching room to be Tyler Stevenson and Luke Maile.
I agree. I think Luke Maile has shown himself to provide quite a bit of value both on defense and with his bat. So I don't want to punt on him. And yeah, if you trade Curt Casali, you're not getting back a relief pitcher. You're not getting back a bench guy. You're getting back a low level prospect, if that. Like, think about what they did with Tucker Barnhart. That's basically probably what they would get for Curt Casali.
Matthew Walker checks in and says, since Luke Maile is having a career year, should we think about trading him? We do have Chucky in AAA in case a catcher gets hurt. Jeff, this speaks to a change in philosophy, I think, because if this were last year, you and I would both be saying, yeah, you trade Luke Maile and get some stuff for him because we're building. Well, we've kind of moved past that point in the window. We're at the point of the window where they're actually looking to win this division. So you don't, I think in this scenario, you don't trade away Luke Maile just because he's having a career year. But Matthew, your point's well taken. You're absolutely right in that you would get more in return. And if that was the main object of the trade, then yes, Mailey's your guy. But in this scenario, the Reds are looking more to add parts to win versus just trading away the talent to build for the future. So no, I'm keeping Luke Mailey.
Yeah, and he's more valuable to this team on the roster than he is for the prospect he'd bring back, because I don't see a realm of reality where Luke Mailey brings back a prospect that would crack the Reds' top 20.
All right, there's too many Steves on this show and in this chat right now because I thought Carlton Van Hoy was yelling at me about putting Elly De La Cruz in outfield, and I'm like, I never said that. And then I realized it's a chat amongst Steves going on here. There's like 3 Steves having a conversation over here in the chat, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I look, I think that there's going to be a part of the career of Elly De La Cruz where he will move to the outfield. I don't know that it's going to be just now, but I think we will see that at some point, probably when Edwin Arroyo is ready to come up.
Speaking of the Steves in the chat, Steve says, I want to hear more about India and why he is struggling so bad lately. At some point, shouldn't he be moved down in the order, say behind Steer and Votto? Well, Steve, I don't think you listened to the first episode of today because that's exactly what we said should happen. I want to see India down in the 7th or 8th spot until he figures it out. I think that whatever is going on with him messed up his head just a little bit, moving him into 3rd. He said on the Jim Day podcast that he struggled with the trade rumors, that they impacted him, that he really believed his time in Cincinnati was coming to an end. And I think it messed up his head a little bit. I would like to see them move him down in the order, give him the opportunity to see some good pitches to hit, build his stats back up just a little bit. And then once he's right, you can talk about moving him back up somewhere in the top 3rd of the lineup. But honestly, Jeff, if you put him down, look, I'm not opposed to batting him 9th. If you put him in the 9th spot and he's a second leadoff guy the rest of the game, right? So it takes a few at bats away from him. It gives a few extra at bats to whoever you move up there. But TJ Friedl has done a tremendous job leading off in games. So I'm okay going Friedl McLain 1-2 the rest of the way. I would not have a problem with India batting 9th, and then you build up the rest of the lineup depending on what pitcher's going that day and what handedness is happening. I would have no problem with that.
Just imagine the Reds lineup from Wednesday night. You move Jonathan India down to 9th. You just move everybody else up 1. That means that you had Benson at 8, India at 9, Friedl at 1, McLain at 2. If you're an opposing pitcher and somebody tells you, hey, you're going in to face the bottom of the Reds lineup, he's like, no, I'm not. I'm facing Will Benson, Jonathan India, TJ Friedl, and Matt McLain. Like that, I mean, that if that's how the lineup turns over, that's pretty good.
No, you're absolutely right. What do you say about this? Adam Evans checks in and says he thinks the hitters know that they have to bring the offense every time Luke Weaver pitches, so it actually helps them. And he did say this a little tongue in cheek, but there might be something to this because the Reds have only lost one of his starts where they've trailed. What was that?
And he's not won any of them. It was a stat that Matt Wilkes had said that I think that 6 of the Reds' 29 comeback wins have been when Luke Weaver starts the game. And it's not as if Luke Weaver has 6 wins under his belt. It's because whenever he leads, they are trailing and they end up winning. But yeah, I think it's more tongue in cheek. I don't want to pad no comebacks. I want a game where the Reds take the lead early and they coast. Is that so much to ask? It feels like it's just too much to ask right now.
It's not. Good grief.
No, I know. We're not at the point in the Reds, the rebuild, the window opening. We're not at the point where we can say, yes, we're a juggernaut and there's just going to be some games that we coast to wins. All of them are going to be tough. I definitely understand that part. But it feels as though the Reds are making them tougher on themselves by running Luke Weaver out there every 5th day.
Our good friend Debbie Brown checks in. She says she agrees. She thinks Stevenson is hurting right now.
It's definitely possible. I mean, he played catcher yesterday.
This reminds me so much of the whole Jesse Winker situation a few years back, Jeff, where he had the shoulder injury, then he was back, and everybody said that he was fine. And then we get to another offseason, and suddenly you read Jesse Winker had shoulder surgery. And then he came back from that and started hitting bombs because his shoulder had been wrecked for a whole season. So I don't know.
That is an eerie similarity. I hadn't thought about that.
So I wonder if I will be very interested to watch how Tyler Stevenson's off-season program goes and what he does. We're definitely going to bring him back on the show, and I will just ask him straight out. Not that he'll tell us, but I'll ask him straight out if his shoulder was bothering him all year when he comes back on. He's been a good friend to us, so I think we'll have him on this offseason, and I'm going to ask.
And I still think there's a mental aspect to it, because he told us whenever we asked him what's the perfect number of games you'd like to catch, and he was like 130. Like, he wants to catch every day, and I think that there is a mental aspect to this of being like, this is what I want to do, but for the greater good of the team, this is not what I'm doing. So there's got to be like a little thought in the back of his head, and he's mature enough to suppress it, but a little thought in the back of his head is just like, I want to be catching. Why am I DHing? I don't want to DH.
Seth Lewis checks in, Jeff, and wants to know how we feel about using Noelvi Marte as a trade chip to get better pitching.
That's how you get Shane Bieber.
Because Seth's saying, there's a crowd of infielders,
Yep.
and there are, man, I would struggle. Is Noelvi Marte untouchable?
I
No,
don't think
he's not untouchable, but it would take a hell of a deal. It'd have to be Shane Bieber plus years, like the extension you were talking about, Jeff. It would have to be something significant, because does Shane Bieber come in and impact this rotation immediately? Yes.
Yeah.
He's a needle mover. I don't like.
He becomes the ace even if everyone's healthy.
Yeah, I think so. Can you imagine a August, September rotation of Bieber, Green, Lodolo, Abbott, and then who cares after that?
And that's the other thing. It's like, it's not just an August, September 2023. Can you imagine a rotation for the next 3 years of Shane Bieber, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, and Andrew Abbott? And then you could put, Williamson could be your emergency sixth guy that probably is down in Louisville. Then you're talking about, you don't have to worry about Luke Weaver. You don't have to worry about, is Ben Lively going to come back soon? Things like that, which, credit to him, he's held down the fort very admirably. But I think there's something to be said for really solidifying this rotation. What have we said coming into this season? The Reds needed to solidify their core. Could they do that by trading one of these guys that we think that, yes, he could be very good in the future, but you could solidify a very important part of your team by trading him? And I don't think, because I'm seeing this in the comments as well, I don't think that's mortgaging the future by trading a guy like that. I mean, this Reds farm system is pretty deep, and sure, you're probably going to have to trade some really important guys to get a guy like him, but I might be talking myself into the idea of trading for Shane Bieber. At the end of the day, if a trade happens where the Reds get a guy like Bieber, and there are some big prospect names that are on the reported deal, I'm not going to be mad about that. I'm going to be happy. There's going to be a little thought in the back of my mind of like, yeah, but what about the future? I'm like, yeah, but what about right now? And what about the next couple of years? Because he's going to be here for another guaranteed year, and I think the Reds would at least have the strategic mind about them enough to go and get 1 more year or 2 more years added to that contract.
Let's take a minute and talk about Spencer Steer, Jeff, because he continues to be almost the forgotten guy. A lot of
talk about him enough.
We're talking about all of these rookies, and yet he's out there right now leading the team in home runs. He has the most RBIs of any eligible rookie in Major League Baseball right now. So that means he's clutch. That should keep all of the Tony Perez guys right now should be losing their mind. They've got their new dude, and it's funny, Jeff, because we've said it jokingly and tongue in cheek and it's somewhat serious at times. The new red machine, right? Everybody's been talking about that. So in that mindset, in that scenario, Spencer Steer is your Tony Perez right now. He is your RBI driving clutch guy. And we don't spend enough time on this, but I still think that Spencer Steer could just low-key slide into Rookie of the Year, especially now that his offensive statistics are continuing to climb. Maybe he pulls that off.
He definitely has an argument. I got to admit, Corbin Carroll really has a chokehold on that top spot for right now. But Spencer Steer has just been so quietly good. And he's doing it exactly the way he told you, playing every position that the Reds ask him to play. He's not a one position guy. Like, He plays left field like he's been there for years. He's already better defensively in left field than Adam Dunn. I know that's not hard to do, but he's only played like 6 games there, and I already know that he's better defensively than Adam Dunn in left field. So I really think that he brings so much value to this team that we just kind of forget about him because he's that guy that, yeah, he's there. We don't have to worry about whether or not he's going to be there or not. We know he's there.
I just want to say that I'm a huge fan of Adam Dunn. So just in case he's listening and we run into him at one of the Reds
I
events,
said defensively, he's not
can
going to
punch
be
you.
offended
He
by
can
that.
punch you in the face. I love you, Adam Dunn. I'm just saying, but
We care about him hitting home runs and getting walks and
hashtag
stuff.
Jeff
That's
hates
what he does.
Adam Dunn. Hashtag Jeff hates Adam Dunn.
Who still has his jersey?
All right, let's fly into a few more of these before we get out of here. There's some questions going on in the comments about locking up some of these young prospects. We saw the Reds do this with Hunter Green, and it's bitten them in the butt, right? Like, we're upset about that. Are we mad that they signed Hunter Green and he's been hurt pretty much ever since? Are you upset, Jeff?
No.
Me either. So who should be the next guy? I'm seeing Matt McLain's name floated around here. Obviously people want to lock up Elly De La Cruz. Spencer Steer has delivered. Do you get him extended right now and buy out some arbitration years? I'm in firm agreement that we need to take the Atlanta Braves approach here and start buying out some arbitration years right now before the price is prohibitive.
I think my answer hasn't changed from where it was a couple of weeks ago, or like a month ago or whatever, that we were talking about this. I think it should be Jonathan India. And I think you do that.
Goodness.
I think you do that and you solidify his mental state. You solidify and say, look, we are committed to you. Because like he said, he was worried about the trade rumors because he's seen Castellanos walk in free agency, Winker get traded, Suarez get traded. He's seen all these guys just waved goodbye. This would be the Reds saying, look, you're a talented dude and you're going to lead this ball club for multiple years to come. We're going to sign you to an extension.
This might be your worst take ever. Oh my God. How do you sign? Number one, he's defensively, there's better second baseman on the team right now defensively that can play that spot that he's really in the way of. When Noelvi Marte makes it to the major leagues, and Noelvi Marte will make it to the major leagues, someone has to move off of the infield, and it's going to be Jonathan India. He's going to play DH. He's going to have to learn left field. It's going to be Jonathan India. He's the worst defender of the bunch. When you have this many guys and you can't keep them all, Jonathan India is not the guy that you lock up. You lock up the ones that you know and you believe are going to be here and that you want to have here for 8, 9, 10 years. That's Matt McLain. That's Elly De La Cruz. That's Spencer Steer. That's probably Noelvi Marte. That's not Jonathan India. Jonathan India is your next great trade piece a year or two from now to bring in the next batch of prospects to restock the minor leagues. If the Tampa model is going to work, there has to be heartache in some of these trades. And Jonathan India is going to be the first piece of heartache that we feel when Krall goes to establish the next wave, because that's how the Cincinnati Reds become a year in and year out contender. It's not a one and done on this rebuild, guys. It's not a one and done on, okay, we've got all these guys. We're going to lock them up. We're going to be the San Diego Padres and spend $300 million and keep everybody that we've got right this second. That's not going to happen. Of this bunch of guys that are rookies right now this year, 2 of those dudes are going to get traded, Jeff. It can't be Jonathan India. I know you want it to be Jonathan India. I know how much you like to support what he's bringing, but at the end of the day, it's not Jonathan India. He's not the droid you're looking for, Jeff. I'm going to use one of your Star Wars references here.
Hashtag
Oh my
Steve
God,
hates
you got
Jonathan
me
India.
fired up. That's fine. I will bear that monster because he is not the one you lock up. He's not the long-term cog that keeps this lineup moving forward for the next 8 years. You know, he's Mr. Right Now as far as a team leader. There's much more talent in some of these younger guys. There's much more stable influences on the infield in some of these younger guys. It's one of them that you have to lock up.
That's a fair point. In that case, I'd lock up Elly.
Okay, that's fair. I can get on board with that. For me right now, if you had to pick one, Matt McLain or Elly De La Cruz, it's a coin flip for me. One of those 2 guys should be locked up. Ultimately, if Elly De La Cruz does Elly things the rest of this year, absolutely. He's an off-season lockup for sure. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to afford him once arbitration hits. But that's kind of where I'm at. Apparently, I'm wrong, Josh. You're telling me I'm wrong. Tell me why. Someone tell me why that Jonathan India is more long-term important than any of those other guys. I'm waiting. Someone tell me.
I love it because I knew I was going to unlock that. I knew I was going to unlock that.
Oh my God.
We've had this discussion before. But no, I think that there's a lot that's going on right now with all the different ticket sales, with everything that's going on. I had a joke with a friend of mine at the Bowtie Bar the other day that he came back and he's just like, good Lord, $14 for a mango cart. What on earth are we doing? I'm like, we're paying Elly De La Cruz. That's what we're doing. That's an Elly beer right there.
I try to look at it through that lens too, with exactly that same thing. All right, Jeff, what else do we want to talk about before we get out of here? We're hitting the 1 hour mark right now. Let's get a couple more in there. Okay, Carlton's weighing in here. Carlton Van Hoy says that Jonathan India is the heart and soul. He's the captain without the C. Call him Kyle Farmer 2.0. Yeah, we traded Kyle Farmer and we survived. The team didn't implode. Things are fine. It's no. This is.
I'm just enjoying watching this.
Everyone
right now. This is so much
you
fun.
guys are all reacting with your heart, and no one is looking at the long-term viability of this team. I don't just want to win the division maybe one time this year or next year and then be done with it. In order to be a perennial first place contender, there's going to have to be roster churn. You only get to lock up one or two of these guys, and all of those other rookies are better than Jonathan India. I can't see it.
Jonathan India just seems cuddly, though.
Man, you know what? I'm going to log you off of this chat. Where's the dump button on this thing?
No, that's fair. That's you're bringing up some fair points, some very interesting conversation points. I don't know. I look at this and I say,
well, we're going here.
Fraley could trade for a number 2 or 3 starter. I don't know that he's worth that. I think that his platoon splits make him not worth that.
Yeah, I don't think you could. I think you could get a number 5 guy for Fraley. But the rest of this, so let's dissect that part out of the comment. The comment that is, I love Fraley, but if we could trade him for a 2 or 3 starter, we would adjust and we would still have Benson. So let's break this up into 2 parts. I think I'm with you, Jeff. I don't think he pulls you a 2 or 3 starter. I think you're looking at a number 5 guy there, but the team would adjust. It might be a little painful for a hot minute. It'd be weird doing the Viking celebration with the Viking traded away, but we would still have Will Benson.
Jake Fraley, let's say Jake Fraley and Noelvi Marte. Or Jake Fraley and Edwin Arroyo for Shane Bieber.
That might not get it done.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's not gonna
maybe
Jake Fraley. I did see this in the comments quite a bit. Dylan Cease.
Is that overpaying for Dylan Cease? Edwin Arroyo and Jake Fraley?
Might be. I don't know. He's got a lot of talent.
Oh, David Brown. I love you, David Brown. Extending Jonathan India would be a Bob Castellini move to appease the fans. That is exactly correct. That is yes. That's the one. That is blocking a Billy Hamilton trade. That is being reluctant to move Yasiel Puig because there's 10 guys in the outfield wearing a t-shirt with his name on it. That is exactly what that is. I wish I had come up with that on my own. David Brown, you win today. You win.
I think we need to get you a bourbon.
You got me fired up, and you did it on purpose, and now I'm mad at you.
I love it. Usually you're the one getting me fired up, so I thought I'd how the turntables.
And I fell for it. So that's probably the worst part of this whole thing. And then we'll end on this note from Steve Burchell's. Wait, where'd it go? Everything keeps moving. Sorry. Where'd it go? There it is. Steve thinks I'm just jealous of India's locks of hair, and that's probably correct.
Thank you all so much for joining us on today's live Locked On Reds podcast. Steve is going to go recover. Thank you all for jumping in the comment section, giving us questions and comments. Make sure you join us. We're going to try and keep doing this on like off day Thursdays. We might have another one coming up next Thursday as well. But thanks everybody for joining in. Make sure you follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting app and right here on YouTube, because we will be Locked On Reds every single day.
I'm so
go
mad
calm down
right now.
Go calm down.